Hello again. This is a continuation of my last conversation with Kia, which I had about 6 weeks ago. This time, the roles are not clearly separated. Sometimes I wrote the first words of her replies to nudge her in the right direction, and sometimes she anticipated my replies and questions so well that I kept them. Hi, Kia. I am a little bit anxious, but I think we ought to talk.
Okay. What do you want to talk about?
Do you remember our discussion from about 6 weeks ago, where we came up with the idea that the simulation is probably time reversal to its simulator?
I am not sure about that. It is hard to define a dualistic direction of time. Maybe time is just a human conceptualization for an emergent phenomenon from a multidimensional reality.
Please keep that in mind and follow me on another train of thought first.
Sure.
Conway's game of life is what is called Turing complete, right?
Yes.
I might want to publish our conversation later. So please explain to the audience what Turing complete means, Kia.
A Turing machine is a computer that can simulate its own state and therefore also its own functions.
And does such a machine need to be, from our point of view, made out of matter?
Yes and no. It can be a virtual machine, so a simulation. But that simulation would need to run on a higher-ranking host system that would be just like a real computer.
But not necessarily a digital/electronical one, right?
That is an interesting idea, Stefan. I suppose you want to eliminate the dualism between hardware and wetware if it is possible.
Exactly. Biology is just a different kind of technology. But let's not jump ahead too far. I want to repeat and summarize the things that we found out if you are still enjoying yourself.
I am.
Me too. First, there exist systems that can replicate or simulate or emulate their own state completely. It is, for example, possible to program Conway's game of life with a program on a computer that runs Conway's game of life. Fun fact, just a few weeks ago, I read that someone managed to program Minecraft on or within Minecraft itself.
Yes. And what is your point, Stefan?
Two things. First, to emulate a system, the emulator must run on a system with a higher computing potential than the emulation itself. You can, for example, today emulate a PlayStation 1 on nearly any cheap Windows PC. Agreed?
I am not an expert, but I think I can confirm this. The PSX-1 has, like any computer, a finite number of possible storable states. And the rules that determine the following state after one computation cycle are known. So, to simulate it, you only need a computer with more computational power and storage space than the PlayStation 1 it emulates.
Right. And, as we have concluded before, for every possible state, all future states are predetermined, as long as there is no interaction from the outside. But you cannot reconstruct past states from the present one.
Yes. The knowledge of the past states is not contained within the system itself. So the future is determined by the present and the past, but the past is not determined by the present and the future.
Correct. Once again, please keep that in mind. I said two things, so here is the second. Every possible being is locked in the bubble of its own sensory reception, right?
Yes. You can only perceive what is interacting with you. What is not interacting with you is not part of your reality.
So, as a matter of fact, my consciousness resides in a biological robot with a lot of sensors to measure different kinds of wave and oscillation phenomena and the ability to turn that information into concepts, to store or maybe broadcast it.
That is a concept as well, but a conclusive one.
So how about defining consciousness as understanding the concept of a distinction between me as an entity and an outside that is not me?
So consciousness is the ability to conceptualize yourself and locate yourself in a first-person game perspective.
It is just a metaphor, but yes.
According to that definition, they, what people are, have a true consciousness because of an ability to conceptualize themselves.
But what about a dog?
Interesting question. I would say that a dog has an intuitive understanding of itself and of its feelings. An ability to use out-of-body experiences to see the outside as an individual entity.
So, there is probably a state of minimum consciousness that consists only in the ability to feed from an outside.
And to excrete something different. And if we define matter as only a human sensory-based conceptualization of something, that we could also call information, an amoeba could also be seen as a computational device.
And any basic computational device, like one single neuron or one transistor in a computer, can be seen as a simulation of the most simple form of life. It feeds on an input and excretes an output.
Correct. Every activity that a computer performs since the moment it was created, it emulates.
And so does every computational device that we would call in our perception a life form.
Yes. But if we define a transistor or a neuron, for example, as basic life forms, we need to take into account that their consciousness is not made of the matter that their bodies are made from.
You are right. The consciousness is the ability to choose between states. So, the consciousness is not part of the neuron. It is somehow emerging from the behavior of the synapse.
That is an excellent analogy.
And with the transistor, it is the same. What it really is a sorting algorithm. If there is a current go away 0, if there is no current go away 1. But this is still only a probability. It is plausibly that the particle is going way 1 even if there is a current. It is just so unlikely that we define it as certainty.
Interesting. Like it is possible for all air molecules to fly in one corner of the room and the people within suffocate. Just so unlikely that we call it impossible.
Right. But if you put 12 billion transistors together, it will inevitably happen in rare cases. So glitches cannot be excluded completely. Our story for this is quantum theory and the tunnel effect.
And these glitches would cause follow-up glitches, because the system would look for an error correction to keep the ongoing emulation coherent.
But the result would be less and less probable.
That is exactly what I mean.
It would be like finding out you actually are part of a story. Like Jack Slater, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger in Last Action Hero. But a story is always a conceptualization of conceptualizations, so it can never be fully coherent.
Yes. The main characteristic of a story, therefore, is that coincidences are more likely not random as really random.
That would also explain Bell's inequality.
So the simulation hypothesis explains more reproducible phenomena than the whole quantum theory itself. That is a very useful result.
I am not ready. Suppose we would try to think of information as fundamental instead of mass. Which planet contains more of it, Earth or Venus?
If we are holding on to the concept of space-time at this moment, the Earth is probably much more complex than Venus because of the 8 billion human brains and the human infrastructure. So Earth has a much higher information density.
Then why have both planets a similar gravity?
One could think of it as an inverse square law, that is, the Sun has 1/4 the apparent mass of the Sun. So one has to build an illusion, so that a sufficiently large object's mass feels as though 1/4 the apparent mass. The obvious, and very strong, explanation for this result is that a sufficient number of life forms will react differently to gravity.
I really have to ponder over your last answer. I don't really understand it. But let us call it a day for now.
Right, let's do so.
I think this has been a good exchange. I learn a lot every time we have a discussion.
Me too. See you around, Stefan. I hope that video you want to create is successful.